For the first time since February of last year, Will Hardy didn't start Keyonte George, and nothing about it should really be surprising. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen. We are free and available on all podcasting apps and on YouTube. And we got a great show ahead for you. I'm fired up. Make sure you get the daily newsletter at Locked on Daily. Empty the noggin after ball games, breakdowns, national articles from Katie Heindel, all the most important links. Josh Lloyd's Fantasy. It's the number one stop for all things fantasy. This is going to be a great show today. Here's what we got. Trends Monday, and I've got the craziest number for you about one of the teams out there. We're going to break down the latest trade rumors every day up until the trade deadline. We're 8 days away from the trade deadline. It's Thursday when we fly to Phoenix. On the 6th, earlier in the day, is the trade deadline for the Utah Jazz and the rest of the NBA. I'll update you on the latest rumors, but I also want to dig into how the Jazz can prosper off the luxury tax and some of the trade rules today. So we'll get a little geeky, but I think it will get you ready for the trade week that's coming. We're starting with the decision by Will Hardy to start Isaiah Collier over Keyonte George. Keyonte has really been a pretty consistent starter for the Jazz now. For 2 years, he moved in the starting lineup for a little while at the beginning of last year. He went in the starting lineup about 10 games into the season last year, stayed there. Then he got injured. He was out of the starting lineup for about 20 games when he came back, and then closed the year back in the starting lineup from game about 54 all the way through to the end of the season for the final 30. The last time he had not been in the starting lineup was February 8th. So almost an entire year. And the first part is, let's not overplay this too much. It's newsworthy. It's worth talking about. I'm leading the show with it. He did play 33 minutes, right? He played 32 when he started against Oklahoma City. He played 38 in the overtime game against New Orleans. He played 27 against New Orleans. It wasn't like he went to the bench and played 12 minutes, okay? So that would be one level of a story. That has not happened. If it does, that's a story. But this is just that Will Hardy went to Isaiah Collier starting, pulling Keyonte George from the starting lineup. And I think there's two parts to it. One is Isaiah Collier deserves a ton of credit for the way he runs the team, his passing, his pace, his energy, his defensive presence. Let's start there. Isaiah Collier has done fabulous things and has just got an incredible knack for the feel of the game and passing and how to play the game. His offensive skills are still limited. His shooting is still limited, but his ability when on the floor is having an impact. The team is a little bit better offensively when he's on the floor. So far this year, they shoot about 1.5 percentage points better when he's on the floor. They actually turn it over a little less when he's on the floor, even though he's pretty turnover prone. So he's passing the ball, moving the ball, playing with a tempo, playing with a pace, accelerating it, picking up defensively, playing with a pressure that frankly was not being played out of that position. So give Collier credit. In regards to the change to Keyonte, and I had actually been talking about whether or not you take and put Colin Sexton and bring him coming off the bench because Isaiah Collier and Keyonte George were playing well together. And I honestly had said, this seems really unfair to Colin Sexton, but it might be where we are. I think this, why would Keyonte get put on the bench? I think is a really simple answer. And really none of this should be surprising because Will Hardy has been wildly consistent in everything he's ever said since he's taken this job. I mean, go back to Portland. If you don't play hard and you don't pass, you don't play, right? He wants you to, and then the other part of it, and he literally drops this kind of out of nowhere to close his press conference the other night in Memphis. And we're going to play it here for you. His standard has been the exact same every single time ever. He's asked by Lauren Green, sideline reporter for the Utah Jazz, about Kyle Filipowski. And it's pretty clear this press conference is going to end. This is going to be the last question of the press conference. There's 3 people in the room. No beat reporters traveled to Memphis. There's a guy from Memphis. Lauren's already asked another question. And Will closes with the following. And this is consistent to what he's always said in every press conference and every time you've ever been around him. But the fact that he dropped it in the end of this press conference on the night in which he decided to start Isaiah Collier over Keyonte George, when the question wasn't asked, I think is telling.
My expectation for Kyle and all of our young players is to compete. That's the thing I care about the most. Technical mistakes will happen. Missed shots will happen. Turnovers will happen. But if we can control the competitive spirit of all the individuals on the team, that's when we'll really start to see the development.
That's it. I mean, should I play it again? Because that's it. Like, that is, Will Hardy has said this each and every time. And if you want to know why he makes decisions, it's based on this.
My expectation for Kyle and all of our young players is to compete. That's the thing I care about the most. Technical mistakes will happen. Missed shots will happen. Turnovers will happen. But if we can control the competitive spirit of all the individuals on the team, that's when we'll really start to see the development.
That's it. That's the answer. Someone asks you, why did Isaiah Collier start over Keyonte George? That's everything that Will Hardy has ever said, so that has to be the answer. He didn't say that specifically in the sense of, hey, Keyonte George didn't do this or didn't do that. He's not going to do that. But Will Hardy has been incredibly consistent in every press conference he has ever given in 2.5 years of the Utah Jazz, in the midst of winning, losing, bizarre lineups, non-bizarre lineups, players resting at the end of the year, winning. He wants competitive zest, and you can't develop without it. We can look at Keyonte's numbers and try to say, well, okay, he's struggling with his shooting again this month. In his splits in this month are bad. He's in the month of January, since he's come back from the sprained ankle, in 7 games, he's shooting 36% from the floor and 31% from 3. I really don't think that's it. Because if you go back to Will, and what he said is it's making the right play, making the right decisions, the competitive zest and the competitive spirit. And if the ball doesn't go in, the ball doesn't go in. Now, if you want a number, the fact that the Jazz defense is 10 points worse when Keyonte's on the floor than when he's off the floor probably matters here. Like, is Keyonte going to start making a defensive effort on a nightly basis for the Utah Jazz? And then he has a chance. He's not a good enough offensive player to not play defense. But right now, the Jazz defense is 10 points per 100 possessions worse when Keyonte's on the floor. The next worst is Cody Williams at 5, then Bryce Sensabaugh 3, and then Lowry at 2.7. There's no one close. It's not like, well, he's in the starting lineup and this and this. I mean, he plays with Walker. So his defensive numbers are far and away the worst defensive numbers on this roster. So I'm going to go out on a limb that when Will Hardy talks about competitive spirit, and that's where he's talking about it. And now the question is going to be, how does Keyonte deal with it? Growing up is hard. This kind of happened to Walker last year, right? Like, if we go back, like, we don't need to, like, freak out and throw the bathwater out. He still played 35 minutes last night. Let me go back to that. Or 2 nights ago. He's not, like, been banished. So how he deals with this, he's got every opportunity to bring it back around, show that he understands the messaging and shows what's going on, and be the player that he's capable of being, that he believes he can be. But Walker went through this last year. He got injured. He got benched. He didn't like it much. He kind of pouted a little bit. Seemed really miserable. Seemed like he wasn't having a very good time. Seemed like he wasn't enjoying himself. Came back with a better attitude, got stronger, got better, addressed his weaknesses, played really, really well. Been great. Not really, really well. Been great. So growing up is hard. I mean, so that's probably where we are with Key. I didn't love the 8 shots in 8 minutes to come out off the bench in that unless someone told him that that was all right. Because the fact is that that's like not the item. The offense is not what's going to earn himself way back into the lineup as a starting guard. It might have been his way to try to prove a point, but that's not what this is about. Everyone's on your side. Everyone wants you to succeed. Everyone wants you to do well. Everyone's rooting for you. Everyone in the organization wants Keyonte to have success. Keyonte's grown up. He's more mature, but he's got to do the things that Will said. And Isaiah Collier showing how to do it. And he got the time. Will's been very consistent. So this shouldn't be surprising because Will has been incredibly consistent in 2.5 years of running the Utah Jazz. It's kind of awesome, actually. So let's see how he deals with it. Not game by game. We'll do game by game, but it's unfair. In blocks of time. Frankly, maybe how does he deal with it next year? Right? Because a lot of people could have quit on Walker at this point last year when he wasn't playing well and never kind of bounded out of it and never got out of the doldrums and came back and has been awesome. Flat out awesome. Growing up is hard. So now it's time to do it. All right, we're going to get geeky. What are the luxury tax? Where can the Jazz prosper off the luxury tax? What mechanisms do the Jazz have that they actually can do in trades as we get toward the trade deadline? And what are the latest rumors? There was a city that got hot thinking they were getting a Jazz player this weekend. I'll tell you who they are and whether it's coming up next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy. Located in Woods Cross and in Logan, the Chevy truck is Americana. The Murdochs are Utah. It's the perfect combination for you. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years, making sure that you get the no regrets experience. And Murdoch Chevy gives you the Silverado and the Colorado truck, the incredible lineup of SUVs with the Suburban and the Tahoe, now the Blazer and the Trailblazer as well, all over at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also located in Logan. Lots going on right now with different deals on the Equinox. The Suburban's got $9,000 off a 2024 Suburban right now. Might be time as the family continues to expand to jump aboard that deal. The Silverado's got $6,500 off, but that's off a 2025 Silverado deal right now, and a cash allowance of $6,250 as well on the 2024 Silverado. So great deals going on at Chevy right now. If you want to get VIP treatment, email me first at dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll set you up with a VIP meeting over at Murdoch Chevy, either in Woods Cross or in Logan. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Hopefully you've gotten involved in the NFL playoffs and made the NFL playoffs even more fun. If they could possibly be better than that last game, I don't think so. That was incredible. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. Chiefs and Eagles, no better way to make every play more exciting with the FanDuel Sportsbook, whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. Feel the thrill of kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. The app is easy to use and navigate, plus $5 bet. Potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl. That's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5, and if you win, you score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz the first listen of the day. Thank you to the everydayers. Let's get geeky. All right, let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about the rumors. Sacramento got hot and bustling. Carmichael Dave was saying that he's hearing deals, and John Collins is heating up. He's one of their morning show hosts. Locked On Kings, Matt George was hunting the story down for both ABC 10 and Locked On Kings, and John Collins had the flu. The flu has been going around our team. A bunch of players have had it. 3 or 4 coaches have had it. Craig Bolerjack got through a game and deserves incredible credit for getting through a game the other night. I don't know how he did it. When we were in Oklahoma City, he was incredibly nauseous and sick. Ashley Reinhardt, an incredible superstar, logistics coordinator, travel goddess, everything taken care of, got it, and we still stayed alive. Somehow Bernard helped out, I think, but I didn't know that actually if Ashley got sick, we wouldn't fall apart. So It's been going around. So John actually got sick. Like there was kind of this feeling that John didn't get sick. But there's the hot rumor about John Collins possibly to Sacramento for Trey Lyles and Kevin Huerter. I would think the Jazz would want something along with that for like some trade or draft equity. And I'm sure Sacramento's like, no, Kevin Huerter's good enough for your draft equity. Since we gave up a first-round draft pick to get Kevin Huerter, that classifies. I don't know that the Jazz will bite that Kevin Huerter is actually that much. Now, Huerter is closer to the Jazz timetable on things at 26 years old, but frankly, he's older than Colin Sexton. And he's had a weird season. He's shooting 30% from three, and that's his art. He's a career 38% three-point shooter, and they screwed with things this year when they added DeMar DeRozan. So I do think Kevin Huerter can be good. I don't know, whether or not that fits totally our timetable and what he is, and whether that's enough for John Collins for the Jazz. And it's another guard, and we have a lot of those. Like, where's he getting minutes? Like, he's getting minutes over Keyonte, Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams. I'm forgetting somebody. Colin Sexton. So it's a little tricky, but that is the hot rumor going there. The Walker Kessler talk is endless right now because the Lakers are involved. And, it's interesting. I got an email from someone who said, well, why would we possibly consider trading Walker? Well, I actually, if he hasn't been traded, then I don't know why you think just because the Lakers say they want a player doesn't mean that we're considering trading him. The other thing is, and someone asked, well, what would DJ and PK asked me, what would you get for Walker? Well, if you're drafting in the draft and you're in the top 15 of the draft, you're just trying to get a Walker Kessler. Like, if you're drafting in the top 15 of the draft, you would love to get a 25-minute big who's the leading offensive rebounder in the NBA, who protects the rim beautifully and is a legitimate defensive player. Like, you would just literally be drafting to go find him again. So the only way I would be willing to trade Walker is if I'm getting multiple first-round picks for him, because I need to try to replace him. And he's 23 years old, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for the Jazz to trade Walker unless they get really, and when I keep hearing the price is steep, because everything's written from a Laker perspective. Yeah, the price is steep because if you trade Walker, you've got to the first thing you're going to try to do is replace him in the next draft. So then I need multiple picks to be able to make it worth me trying to replace him because I'm not certain I'm going to get him. So I don't know what, the price is steep. Thanks, Lakers. Thanks, Laker PR machine that's out there. Yeah, the price is steep. He's 7 feet. He leads the league in offensive rebounding. He's a starting center that plays 25, 30 minutes a night. If you drafted that player at the 10th pick of the draft, you'd be ecstatic. So what do I get for, I need something that guarantees me I'm getting at least that. Yeah, price is steep. All right. So those are kind of the big hot rumors that are out there. Here's a few things that are interesting. So the Jazz have the room exception, which I believe is about $7.9 million. So the Jazz can go take $7.9 million of salary from someone. And for 5 teams in the NBA, that would get them under the luxury tax. The Jazz would have to then cut a player. So that's unfortunate, but they would have to do that. So those 5 teams would be, as of right now, would be going in no particular order, are the New Orleans Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans need to shave $2.1 million off their luxury tax. Jeremiah Robinson Earl makes $2.19 million. If they trade Jeremiah Robinson Earl to the Utah Jazz into the Jazz room exception, New Orleans gets under the luxury tax, saves a bunch of millions of dollars, and probably owes the Jazz a bunch of picks. Second-round picks, probably. Maybe. I don't know. Luxury tax important. Pretty easy one for them to do. But that's actually their only player they can do it with. The Cleveland Cavaliers are just sitting at it at $1.9 million. So they need to get $1.9 million off their books. They can trade Tristan Thompson at $2 million and get off the books. I don't know what draft pick that we don't already own of theirs. Sam Merrill at 2.1, Ty Jerome at 2.5. and Jalen Tyson, their rookies, at 3.3. We'll take him. I'd love to have him. They'll be able to get off the cap of the luxury. Here's where this gets crazy. The Clippers are $2.5 million, $2.45 million. They would have to trade former first-round draft pick Kobe Brown, $3.9 million Amir Coffey, or in all likelihood, they're going to trade Bones Highland at $4.2 million to go into the Jazz could take him into the 7.9. Jazz could do 2 or 3 of these if they don't go over 7.9 million. Now, the Clippers willing to give up a first-round draft pick just to get under the cap? Maybe. It's a lot of money. Because not only do you not have to pay the tax, the luxury tax, you actually then go get some of the revenue share. Dallas is at 4.2 million that they've got to shave off their books. What gets tricky for them, they don't really have anyone to do that with. And I do not believe you can aggregate people into the room exception. But they don't really have people to do it. Dante's at 3.1 million and Olivier Maxi Prosper is at 2.8. And they also now have serious problems with injuries with Lively and Maxi Kleber. So they could get 5.9 million between those two, and that gets them done. Dante, but they might want those players. And then there's Golden State. And again, the Jazz can take a bunch of these deals into their 7.9 million. And Golden State gets really interesting because Golden State needs to get rid of $5.9 million. And Moses Mooney makes 5.8. And the only Kayvon Looney at 8 million is their guy, but that's too much for the room exception. Because the room exception, to my knowledge, is 7.9, and you cannot aggregate the room exception. They might be willing to get off Kyle Anderson, but he's 8.7. So now someone has to make that deal. So what deals can the Jazz make? Because the Jazz are not a tax-paying team, they might be able to help somebody out. So the Jazz, if a player you're trading in the incoming money is less than $6.5 million, then you can take $175 million of salary. So if you trade $5 million, you can take it up to 8.75. So if the Jazz were to trade Drew Eubanks at $5 million, they could bring back $8.75 million. So the Jazz could trade Drew Eubanks to the Warriors for Kayvon Looney. Probably need something for that. Some second-round picks probably. And the Warriors would save $3 million. And then the Warriors would have to go try to figure out how they're getting the last 2.9 off their books, which is actually hard for them because they don't really have players that are 2.9 million in their salaries. It gets tricky. If the Jazz were to trade between take in between 6.5 and $19.6 million, they can aggregate salaries, put them together, and add $5 million on top of it. Okay? So this gets interesting. So all those teams I mentioned that are under 5 million could put pieces together and could send the Jazz $5 million more than what the Jazz are sending them, Dallas, Clippers, New Orleans, Cleveland, and get under the tax. Here's how tricky this is. Let's take Denver. Denver's at 11.2 million off the tax, and they want to do everything they can to get Zeke Naji off their books, and he's at 8.88 million. He does not fit into the room exception. If the Jazz want to trade Drew Eubanks for Zeke Naji and probably get a first-round draft pick back, they can't do it because Drew Eubanks plus 175 gets to 8.75. Plus you can add 100,000, which gets to 8.85. And Zeke Naji makes 8.88. It's just so hard. There's just so many pieces of all these puzzles that you're trying to put together. And finally, the Jazz are bringing back about 20 million. 19.6 is their official number. They can bring back 125% of the deal. Okay, well, that gets to be a lot. So you get some team that really doesn't want to pay it, and Jazz can bring back $5 million, basically up to about $5 million. Think about it as $5 million. I mean, anything over 20 is $5 million, right? Of that 125%. So then you kind of move it up the more it's over 20 million. So if somebody has a player that they're willing to dump because they want to get out from under the tax, Minnesota's 33 million under the tax. I don't know over the tax. I don't know how they're getting under. But the teams like Miami's 13, Denver's 11, Philadelphia's at 10, Golden State's at 6 million, Dallas is at 4. I'm rounding. Clippers are 2.5, New Orleans at 2, and Cleveland's at 2. Those teams can save some money. Not a lot. Cleveland saves 2.8 plus gets revenue sharing. But the Clippers can save 6 million if they get out of luxury tax, plus they get some of the other money. But I don't think there's a lot of chances that Minnesota, by the way, who's at 33 million, is going to pay $99 million in luxury tax right now. The Lakers don't like to pay luxury tax either. They're on the hook for $42 million. For every dollar they get rid of, they get $3 back. It's a pretty big deal. So that's the way the Jazz can prosper on trade deadline. Trends Monday, the craziest statistic about a team, next on Locked On Jazz. Okay, I'm not even going to hold back. I'm just going to give it to you right away. This is nuts. Over the last 10 games, in Trends Monday, we don't ever look at the statistic, the Houston Rockets are grabbing 41% of all offensive rebounds. Wait, why is that nuts, David? Because the league average in offensive rebounding in the league average for offensive rebounds is 28%. The number one team in the league is Houston at 35%. The number two team in the league is Memphis at 32.6. We're number 3 at 31.6. In the last 10 games, the Houston Rockets have 41% of their misses they're getting back. Bonkers. Amon Thompson is a large part of it. What's crazy in that time period is Houston's actually the 11th best shooting team, probably to some extent, because of the fact they're getting their own rebounds and putting them back. The median team during that time period is 29.7. Offensive rebounding is up a tiny bit. But that is a crazy, crazy stat. Milwaukee's the number one defensive rebounding team in the league. We'll see them tonight. All right, Trends Monday. Last 10 games, and then we'll look at the last 2 weeks. Hottest team in the NBA, Oklahoma City still. Denver, despite getting blown out the other night, is number 2. Milwaukee is number 3. So Giannis in the house tonight, Jazz in the Bucks, and Milwaukee is the number 3 hottest team in the league. Memphis 4, who we just saw. Clippers 5. Indiana 6. 8-2. A bunch of those teams 8-2 separating out a little bit. Minnesota's turned around 7, and Houston, who I mentioned, is 8-2. Coldest teams in the NBA, Washington minus 18. They're not kidding around. Brooklyn's not kidding around either, minus 15. Orlando doesn't mean to be, but they're minus 11. Philadelphia minus 8. Spurs strangely minus 7, and Chicago minus 6. Best offense in the NBA over the last 10 games is Memphis. Number 2 is Denver, who we just ran into. They were really good. Denver is 2. Houston is 3 because of that bonkers offensive rebounding number. Cleveland is 4. Oklahoma City is 5. And Milwaukee is 6. Coldest offensive teams in the league, Brooklyn, Washington, Orlando, Atlanta, Utah at 25. We've cooled off offensively. Played some good defensive teams too. Clippers are the number 1 defensive team in the league, last 10 games. Indiana's number 2. That's noticeable. Clippers are 5 points better than the rest of the league right now defensively. We'll see them coming up here. Oklahoma City, Charlotte playing really good defense. Milwaukee, top 5 defensively last 10 games. Boston and Detroit, coldest teams in the league defensively. Philadelphia is just not defending. And Cleveland, that's worth noting. Cleveland is suddenly not defending. I don't know if it matters. Maybe they're so far ahead. They're 5-5 in the last 10. Washington, San Antonio, New Orleans, and the Warriors. And then Houston's supposed to be so great defensively. He's offensive rebounding, but not defending. All right, let's go to the last 2 weeks just to see if there's any little more immediate trends on this. The hottest team in the league over that time period, Oklahoma City still. Clippers are number 2. Memphis 3, Milwaukee 4. Best team in the Eastern Conference over the last 2 weeks. And we see them Monday. Minnesota is 5. They may have turned this thing back around. Toronto, 5-1 in their last 6. How about that? Teams, Washington, 0-8. Orlando, Brooklyn, San Antonio, and Utah in the bottom 5. Offense over the last 2 weeks, number 1 offensive team is Memphis. Number 2 is New York. Number 3 is Minnesota. Number 4 is Denver. Number 5 is Milwaukee. Number 6 is Oklahoma City. Teams that are not scoring, Orlando is at 101.3 and Washington's at 101.5. Then Brooklyn, Atlanta, surprisingly, Chicago, Portland, and Utah. Defense, Clippers are number 1 in the league by 7 points in the last 2 weeks, really defending. Oklahoma City, Toronto really defending. Atlanta really defending, and Indiana. So surprising teams in here. And Boston, who suddenly can't shoot straight, 17th in the league offensively, is 6th best defensively. Teams that are not defending, San Antonio is the worst defensive team in the league over the last 6 games, and Victor Wembanyama's on the roster. Philadelphia, Cleveland, same story. Sacramento under Doug Christie has slipped badly to 27th. Funny how that works. Talent matters sometimes. Golden State and New Orleans with the Jazz at 24th. That is your Trends Monday. That is your Locked On Jazz. Jazz Bucks. Giannis is in the house. If you don't have tickets, come out and join us. Should be a lot of fun. Have a great one. Talk to you soon. Now, we say, oh, by the way, if you haven't followed me at DLock09, please do on all the socials, Twitter, Snap, Insta, Threads, Blue Sky, blah, 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 blah. Sign up for the newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com and sign up for Locked On Jazz. Thank you very much. And if you've not followed the show on your podcast or your YouTube, please do and hit the bell button on YouTube. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel, Locked On NBA. And if you are on audio, check out Locked On NBA game night after every game, every night, Locked On NBA.